So my name is Ale, and I'm a senior majoring in interdisciplinary health sciences with a minor in health administration, and I've been in Destino since my sophomore year. Okay, so throughout my college years, one of the things I wrestled with the most is learning how to share my struggles with others and trust that God will meet me in them. So to start my talk, I'd like to read Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I felt this promise close to my heart for quite some time. This promise of assured rest to those who come to him, take his yoke, and learn from him. In our moments of need, God doesn't want us to pull away. Instead, he wants us to come to him. He desires to meet us in our place of need, and since Christ bore the full suffering of sin on the cross in our place, he truly knows the pain we endure. The spring before my freshman year of college, I was diagnosed with anxiety and a panic disorder, but ever since I could remember, I had always felt anxious and fearful. It just now had a name. So coming into my first year, I was absolutely horrified. So to help cope with this new adjustment, I scheduled literally everything into my Google Calendar. I made a 4-year plan, and every minute that I wasn't in class or in a meeting, I was studying. And to no one's surprise but my own, this actually made me more anxious. My sophomore year, I decided that I would try something different. I would schedule in time for God again. And for me, this looked like going to Bible study. And now, don't get me wrong, this was great and all. But every time I went to Bible study or a social, I would leave and have a panic attack. I would feel so defeated, because if God's desire was for his people to be in fellowship with one another, why would he let me experience such fear and anxiety in a place where I should feel peace? In these moments, I felt so much shame. I thought that if I loved God and I followed him, I wasn't supposed to be feeling so anxious and afraid. But the more I got to know others in Destino and heard them share about the lies that they had been believing in, the more I saw how God was using it to bring healing and truth to them. At the same time, God was slowly building up the little courage that I had to share my own fears and my anxious thoughts with others. No matter how big or little my fears were, God would continue to meet me in them as long as I was willing to share them. This is the invitation that Jesus extends to us in Matthew 11:28-30. In these verses, Jesus is speaking to those who are growing weary and burdened by the legalistic rules of the Pharisees. As college students, we can easily be overwhelmed with everything we need to get done, such as completing course prereqs, research, volunteering, shadowing, exams, or just general things in life. These things can easily start to weigh us down. And to this, Jesus responds, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." But what does this mean? He's inviting us into a relationship with him. He isn't requiring us to meet some standard of perfection. Instead, he's inviting us to come as we are. It's our very burden that qualifies us to come to him. When we're willing to accept this invitation and come as he promises to give us rest. This isn't a physical rest, but rest for our souls. If we aren't able to lay down our own burdens and pick up his yoke, we will continue to grow weary. It may sound contradicting that we have to take on something else in order to find rest, but that's because his yoke is different than a typical yoke. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. Typically, a yoke is a beam that is placed over a pair of oxen to plow for agricultural purposes. This yoke is often too heavy to bear on our own. But when we take on Jesus' yoke, we no longer have to rely on ourselves. Jesus promises to carry the burden for us. We no longer have to prove ourselves or make sure that we're measuring up. We no longer have to rely solely on ourselves. That's why Jesus came. He came down as fully man and fully God, lived a sinless life, and went to the cross out of love for us, so his yoke would be easy. So when we accept his sweet invitation to come and take his yoke, he also calls us to learn from him. We can't continuously experience the rest he's promised us in verse 28 if we aren't practicing verse 29. Learning from him means seeking him daily. For me, learning from Jesus means being vulnerable with God and others about my anxieties. Instead of allowing myself to ruminate in my thoughts and keeping it to myself, I can choose to be open and honest with my friends about the anxious thoughts I've been having. And practically, this started to look like acknowledging that I'm not in control. I love feeling like I have some sense of control over things in my life and that I'm the most equipped to handle my own problems. But in reality, God is, and I'm able to trust him because he is good. Even though some days it's really hard to believe in this truth, I can trust in his faithfulness to his word that he will not forsake me, even in my doubts. I can approach God with all my worries, even if it seems irrational and silly, because He understands and can handle my anxieties. Learning from Him also looks like being in my Word. You can only imitate someone as much as you know them. And what better way to get to know someone than spending more time with them? Even in just these 3 verses, God expresses His nature to us, that He is gentle and humble in heart. Knowing this makes it all the more easier to approach Him with our worries. Because He is gentle and humble in heart, I know that He'll hear my cries and meet me with compassion and open arms. He's not going to laugh and belittle my fears or tell me that my worries are far too big or far too small for Him to handle. Instead, He's going to meet me in my fears and remind me that He's always with me. So, when we come and place our trust in Him, He says that we will find rest for our souls. He doesn't say we might find rest for our souls. Instead, He promises this with assurance. This may be hard to believe, and by now I feel like I should enough about how mistrusting I can be. And so I know that it's hard for me to believe sometimes too, especially when it's not a rest we can instantly feel. But we shouldn't be discouraged or feel shame if we aren't feeling the rest. Learning to trust Christ is a lifelong journey that isn't always linear. Where our trust in Him may fail, His faithfulness remains the same. All that He asks of us is to take a small step of faith. This can be letting someone into your struggles, so you don't have to bear your burdens alone. God wants to be able to work in us in the midst of our hardships. He desires more than anyone to help us in our moment of need. We just need to be honest with ourselves and Him that we've run out of our own strength and we need His help. So if you ever find yourself feeling anxious, scared, or overwhelmed, and you think you're burdening or inconveniencing others by sharing what you're struggling with, I can assure you that that is far from true. There are surely some wonderful people around you who are so willing to listen and meet you with love if you gave them the chance. But if that still seems scary, then you can share your worries with God because He delights in you and wants to bring you rest.